Good afternoon. I have just returned from Buckingham Palace, where I accepted an invitation from His Majesty the King to form the next government of this great nation. I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages, and a recommitment to the two-state solution. A recognised Palestinian state alongside a safe and secure Israel.
His dramas may be low on the scale of recent British political scandals, but the shine has worn off remarkably quickly after a stunning electoral victory. Keir Starmer has come under fire for accepting free tickets to a Taylor Swift concert. His top aide has already been replaced, and polls have shown a precipitous fall in approval ratings. As Britain's first Labour Party Prime Minister in 14 years approaches his first 100 days in office, it is clear that Starmer has not had the smoothest start. His dramas may be mild on the scale of recent British political scandals compared to Prime Minister Liz Truss, whose economic plan triggered global financial turmoil and prompted her resignation after 45 days in office, or Boris Johnson, booted out for his prevarications about pandemic parties. But it's remarkable that after Starmer led such a stunning electoral victory, his shine has worn off so quickly. Polling by More in Common, a British think tank, found that Starmer's personal approval rating has plunged 45 points since the July election, and Labour is now just 1 point ahead of the Conservatives, who 3 months ago suffered their worst defeat in parliamentary history. There's just not a willingness amongst the public to cut the government that much slack, which means that even stuff that might seem relatively minor can have a significant impact, said Luke Trial, director of More in Common. Starmer has shrugged off the criticisms as water off a duck's back and argued that his government has done a lot in its early days. Labour has announced plans for a state-owned energy company and lifted a ban on onshore wind. The United Kingdom has ceded sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius and imposed a partial arms embargo on Israel. He has already been to the White House twice. Starmer has laid the groundwork for some tough choices ahead, blaming the financial black hole left by his predecessors. But beyond an unpopular cut to winter fuel subsidies for retirees, it is not yet clear how he plans to get out of the hole. During Wednesday's edition of Prime Minister's Questions, the weekly, gladiatorial clash between the Prime Minister and the opposition Conservative leader and former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak tried to press Starmer for more clarity on his government's upcoming budget. But the questions were batted away. Some political analysts say the budget announcement planned for the end of October is coming too late, that waiting nearly 4 months to detail his economic plans may have been an own goal harming his own interests. Our prime ministers in the past have regretted not doing enough early on. The time to spend political capital is when you have it, said Martin Baxter, chief executive of Electoral Calculus, a political consulting firm. Otherwise, it just leaches away, and it's never going to be as high as it was right after the election. That's the moment, and they didn't take it. The latest blow to Starmer's fledgling premiership came over the weekend when Sue Gray, his chief of staff, abruptly resigned after an internal power struggle and a fight over her pay. Gray earned £170,000, more than $222,000 a year in the role, which was £3,000, nearly $4,000 more than the Prime Minister earns, but less than other British civil servants. Starmer has also been dogged by headlines about accepting gifts of fancy clothes, designer glasses, and those Taylor Swift tickets. After weeks of bad publicity, Starmer paid back more than £6,000, $7,850 worth of donations, and vowed to change the rules on what ministers are allowed to accept. People didn't vote for Starmer because he is charismatic. He is not a flamboyant politician like Johnson. But that may be precisely why the scandal gained traction with voters. It clashed with Starmer's image as an uncompromising, squeaky clean politician. It is still very early days in Starmer's premiership. There is no sense that the ship is sinking, and Starmer can rely on a comfortable Labour majority in Parliament to push forward his government's agenda. And yet, Labour won only about a third of the vote share, meaning that it doesn't have the same kind of protection that previous governments have had to help weather storms. The flip side of having a volatile electorate is that it can turn the other way if things start to feel better, Trial said. Starmer dodges a question on the paused PS1BN investment into a port in London. DP World has sunk the anchor on PS1BN that was set to be spent on the London Gateway container port. This was after critical comments by Labour ministers about DP World's subsidiary, PO Ferries. The announcement was set to be a cornerstone of next week's investment summit. When this was put to the Prime Minister, he said in the last, 4 weeks, we've had at least 5 or 6 huge investments in the UK, including PS24BN today. We've got a massive investment summit coming up on Monday where leading investors from across the globe are all coming to the UK. This is very, very good for the country, very, very good for the future of jobs. It's just the sort of change that we need to see. One Nation Tory leader backs Kemi Badenoch. Damian Green has endorsed Kemi Badenoch to be leader of the Conservative Party. He had previously backed Tom Tugendhat. The One Nation faction sits at the centre of the party and is not a natural fit for either MS, Badenoch or Robert Jenrick. This follows a separate announcement by the centrist Conservative group, the Tory Reform Group, which yesterday declared it would not support either of the two candidates. Mr. Green, who chairs the group but is no longer an MP, spoke to The Independent, saying since the final 2 candidates for Conservative leadership have been chosen, there have been concerning reports of moderate party members saying they won't vote. They backed other candidates and now feel neglected. I also supported another candidate, Tom Tugendhat, as strongly as I could. But I fully intend to cast my vote in the members' part of the election, not just because you should always use your vote if you have one, but because I believe there is a candidate who can unite the party around a positive agenda. That candidate is Kemi Badenoch. While she and I come from different Conservative traditions, she is addressing important issues that matter to voters and is proposing a project to redefine conservatism for the new era. Blow to No 10's investment summit as port giant pulls PS1BN announcement over PO Row. The government's investment summit has been dealt a major blow after ports and logistics giant DP World withdrew a planned PS1BN investment announcement for its London Gateway container port. The decision follows criticism from a member of Sir Keir Starmer's cabinet. The Dubai-based company's investment was set to be a centerpiece of Monday's event, which aims to showcase Britain's appeal to global investors, with both the Prime Minister and Chancellor Rachel Reeves in attendance. However, DP World's investment is now under review following criticism by Transport Secretary Louise Hay and Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner over its subsidiary, PO Ferries. In March 2022, PO sparked controversy by firing 800 British seafarers and replacing them with cheaper, mostly foreign workers, a move the company claimed was necessary to avoid collapse. Announcing new legislation to protect seafarers on Wednesday, MS Hay described PO as a rogue operator and urged consumers to boycott the company. In a joint statement with MS Rayner, MS Hay called PO's actions a national scandal, while MS Rayner condemned it as an outrageous example of employer manipulation. Labour costing people jobs, Tories claim over pulled port investment announcement. As we reported that PS1BN investment into a UK port had been pulled following comments from Labour ministers. Andrew Griffith, the Conservatives' Shadow Trade Secretary, has now responded, saying this is further evidence that Angela Rayner may have 2 jobs, but she's costing other people theirs. It's not surprising that when you take union laws back to the strike-hit 70s, the UK becomes less investable. It's not canopies at summits that sway investors, it's having a sensible environment to do business. Starmer to call on UK regulators to prioritise growth agenda. Sir Keir Starmer will call on Britain's economic regulators to prioritise their mandates for stimulating economic growth as part of a pitch to attract global investors next week. The Prime Minister plans to use his speech at Monday's International Investment Summit to announce that his administration will scrutinise regulators across various industries, ensuring they do not act as barriers to growth. The event, held in the city, will serve as a test of Labour's economic agenda in the eyes of investors who control the destination of trillions of pounds of investment funding. According to officials, Starmer is determined to send a clear message that regulators, including Ofwat, Ofgem, the Prudential Regulation Authority, and the Competition and Markets Authority, should focus on enhancing the UK's competitiveness. His speech, however, will take place against the backdrop of a financial crisis at Thames Water, the UK's largest water utility, which is backed by sovereign wealth and pension funds from countries like Abu Dhabi, Canada, and China. A water industry executive suggested that the PM's speech could be seen as a signal to Ofwat, the water regulator, to tread carefully when considering the implications of Thames Water's potential collapse on international investor confidence in Britain. Labour's approval ratings drop as party nears 100 days in government. Tomorrow marks Sir Keir Starmer's 100th day as Prime Minister. Ahead of this milestone, YouGov pollsters have surveyed the public's opinion on the new administration, and the results may cause concern within number 10. So far, 59% of respondents disapprove of the Labour government's record, while only 18% approve. Furthermore, 39% of the public feel that the country is worse off now than it was under the Conservatives. These troubling figures stand in stark contrast to the more positive polling results seen before the election. On specific policies, early release of prisoners to ease overcrowding in prisons and means testing for the winter fuel payment are among the most unpopular. Comparing the Labour Party under Keir Starmer, 5,923 United Kingdom adults surveyed, where 35% think under Keir Starmer things changed for the better, and 15% thinks it changed for the worse. However, 30% people thinks not changed much at all, and 19% don't know about it. What do you think about Sir Keir Starmer's government? Let us know by your valuable comments.